There are several ways to get funnel data or actually visually see a funnel in Google Analytics. There is a behavior flow report that's under behavior flow. This shows you how users flow through your site step by step. It's a useful report at a first glance, but I don't really use this one often. I find it too busy and quite limiting. You can't filter this report, for example. So I might have pages in here that I don't want to see, or I might want to see this for a particular segment of users, and I can't do that. Unfortunately, if the page I'm interested in is not here, I can't add it, and it just gets lumped into this group at the bottom. I can see some stats here, but I can't see where people are coming from and where they're going to, which kind of defeats the purpose of this report for me. For example, let's say I wanted to see how many people go from the homepage to the UX design course. I can't see that here. And I can't see where people go from the UX design course. Moreover, it's not really true, kind of looks like a funnel, but it really isn't. For example, notice that if I go from homepage to the web design course and then back to the homepage, it actually goes probably over here, and there's another homepage here. So there's a lot of these duplicate steps because the user's flow just keeps going forward to the right here. So these are not truly steps of your funnel. There's no users going back to a previous step, for example. One thing that is really great about this report is the events and pages view. And that's really great if you actually have some events set up in some key points in your site. And if you select that, what you can see is all your pages and events together in a sequence. So now you can have these kind of virtual steps that are not actual pages. So for example, if somebody goes to your homepage and then watches a video and you fire an event for that, you can see that as a step. And if you wanted to know how many people drop out after watching the video, or how many of them go to some other page and which pages those are, then you can see that. You can also see the events flow report to see just the events. A much better way to see how users flow through the site in terms of your actual funnel is through the goal flow report. You can find that under the conversions module, goals, goal flow. It looks exactly the same as the behavior flow, but this is a true funnel. In this case, there wasn't a funnel set up, but if one were, it would look something like this. And you can see users, this is the traffic, and it's getting narrower and narrower as users are dropping out. You can see drop off at each step. You can see users looping back to a previous step. You could see users skipping a step or doing some really complex stuff depending on your funnel, whether steps are optional or mandatory and how many steps there are and so on. But the point is, it is a true funnel. Each step is named. You can give it your own user-friendly name in English, not a page URL. And so it's really easy to digest what is happening. In this case, there was a sign-up goal created, but there wasn't a funnel attached to it. Ideally, when you create a goal, you can create a funnel, which is a sequence of pages leading up to that goal. And then if that is set up, then when you go to this report, you'll actually see that funnel. There's another report in the same section. It's called the funnel visualization. It shows you very similar data, but it shows you, in this case, again, there's no funnel set up, but if it were, it would look something like this. It's a more traditional kind of funnel visualization. One thing to note about this report is that backfills previous steps. So if people went from step 1 to step 3, you would still see a lot of visits on step 2, even though a lot of users didn't actually visit that step. This report, the goal flow does not backfill. So for that and many other reasons, I prefer the goal flow because it's much more flexible. It shows loop backs, allows you to see skipped steps, and it doesn't backfill. But there are actually a few reasons why I very rarely use either of these reports. First of all, each of these reports has its own obscure behavior. For example, I mentioned the backfilling, but there's lots of other things that they do that is different and kind of hidden. You can Google goal flow versus funnel visualization, and Google has a page, a full page, just listing dozens of differences between these reports. Another disadvantage is that you obviously, as I already mentioned, you can't use these reports if you haven't set up a funnel. Another disadvantage is that they're session-based. So as you can see here, it's filtering by session. And what we are interested in is users. I want to know how many people came to this step, not how many sessions resulted in that state. Another disadvantage is that you can only see one goal at a time, right? Because the funnel is set up for the goal. It's the pages you go through to get to that goal. But you might have multiple goals. In this case, we have sign up and enrollment. And so I actually can't see sign up and enrollment in the same funnel, which is unfortunate. And then finally, which is kind of a really big thing for me because I like to drill in and explore different user segments, you can't filter these reports. So if I wanted to focus on a specific traffic demographic, like a particular referral source, or I wanted to see which path mobile visitors take, if they are more likely to skip a certain step, something like that, then I couldn't do that here. I couldn't filter out existing customers versus new customers, for example, which could be really important for me planning my A/B test if I'm planning to target one or the other. So for all these reasons, I very rarely actually use these reports because I find them too limiting. So if you don't have a funnel set up and you want to avoid all these disadvantages, you can build your own funnel view manually using custom segments and sequence conditions on the custom segments. And I prefer to do that because it gives me a lot more control. So for example, I'd like to know the full funnel from the course detail pages, like the Web Design 101 page, product page, the UX course product page, and so on. I want to know the funnel from there to the sign-up goal, and then finally to enrollment. And I want to see drop-off at each of those steps. So let's build that funnel manually. First, let's go to step 1, which is our visitors to any course page. So what I'll actually do is I'll get out of here. I'll just go to my simple audience overview report. And I have a custom segment already set up for course detail visitors. So I'm just going to add that. I'll find that segment, course visitors. And when I'm hovering over it, you can see that it has conditions on it. So I want to filter only people who have visited any of those 4 course pages. So I'll select that. And so there, I have the first step of my funnel. I have it in users and have 100% control over what I'm seeing because I can now go in there into that segment, right? And here's all my conditions for pages, and I can add another course to it, or maybe there's something special about the UX course and I actually don't want to include it in here for some reason. I just want to do the web course and the branding course and so on. Maybe I want to add some people who purchased a particular product that go in that funnel. I want to know only people who used a particular browser or only people using mobile devices. So I have unlimited control here over how I filter this funnel step. So now what I'm going to do is overlay the visitors who hit those pages that I just filtered and then continue to the tour. Now in this report, the blue line is the course detail visitors. And now I'm going to add the lab course to tour. So now the orange line are the people who continue to the tour. The tour, in this case, is a rough measure of the signups. Remember that when we were comparing the mobile and the desktop flow, we saw that when you sign up on a course page, you get automatically taken to the tour. So we can use that URL as our sign up metric. So let's do that for now. So let me show you how this second segment actually looks. This is where I actually build my path that I'm going to use as a filter. I can have 2 steps, 3 steps, 10 steps, whatever I want. I can create this segment, and then let's say I want to try something else. I want to investigate some particular, let's say I wanted to know, okay, how many people go from the tour to a specific page? I can just take this custom segment, I can duplicate it, and then modify it, and then compare the 2 segments to see if there's any differences. So I can have different segments to see the drop-off between 2 high-level steps. So I could have, let's say my step 1 is the home page and step 2 is already the enrollment, and I can see the drop-off between those 2 steps. Or I could have it really granular, a very specific flow, like how many people go from the home page, then get curious, go to the pricing page, then go somewhere else, go to the blog, then go to the tour, and so on. Like whatever I want to investigate, I can do it. Notice here that I can add many specific conditions. It can be just one page name, multiple pages. It could be either this or that. It could be a pattern of pages. I could do a regular expression match, or it could be something completely different. It could be events. So, for example, I could have a funnel where I have people visit a page, and then in step 2, watch a video, which fires an event. I could do that. I can't do that in the goal flow or funnel visualization reports. One other thing that I find really useful here is exploring direct and indirect funnels. So, for example, here I have all my course pages and then to the tour, and this just says is followed by. And this means that they could go to this step, meet this condition, then go somewhere else, and then eventually make it to the tour. But I could change this and say immediately followed by. So this allows me to see people who go to the next step directly without any intervening pages, and then compare that to people who visit the same pages in the same order, but indirectly. For example, I can see how many people get to the shopping cart and then leave, and then come back and eventually purchase. I can see what they visited during that time, and I can compare that to people who purchase right away. Here, I'm using the visits to the tour page to measure signups. And if I actually didn't have an event to track this, this would work just as well. But in this case, we do have a sign up goal set up, so we could easily replace this page condition with that goal. I took this segment and I copied it using the sign up condition instead. So in this chart, I can see that the green and the orange lines are pretty much the same. And the orange line is my original method using the tour page visits to track signups. And the green is my new method, actually using the sign up goal in the funnel. Doing this kind of quick comparison between segments can be really useful for testing assumptions. For example, I assumed that people visiting the tour are people who have signed up, but maybe if the visits to the tour were much higher than signups, then I might have had to investigate where are those other tour visits coming from if not signups, and vice versa. If there were far fewer tour visits, then I might have to investigate, okay, how are people signing up without visiting the tour page? Seeing that they're the same here just confirms that my assumption was correct. So let's apply another progressive segment to this to see how many people actually continue to enrollment. We have step 1, we have step 2. This is a copy of step 2, so let's just modify this one. And we'll say course to tour to enroll. And then in the funnel definition here, we're going to say add another step. enrollment completions per user doesn't equal to 0. Okay, so now we have 3 steps in this funnel. I'm going to save that. So here I have a simple funnel set up with step 1, step 2, step 3. And now to calculate the drop-off or the conversion rate at each step, I would simply divide the number of visitors remaining by the visitors to the previous step. And that way I get the same information as I would get from the goal flow or the funnel visualization, but it's more detailed. I have total control over it and gives me actual users, not sessions. Once I've calculated all the drop-offs and conversion rates between these steps, I would continue to look at other paths, because this is one specific funnel. It's starting on the course detail pages and going through sign up and enrollment indirectly. I would then see, is it different? Is it different when people start on the homepage? Is it different when people go directly from the homepage to the courses, or directly from the sign up to the enrollment? For those that are indirect, where do they go? So I'd construct at least, in this case, 5-6 different funnels with different conditions starting at different steps, so I can truly understand all the different scenarios that users go through. Once I've finished with all of my analysis in Google Analytics, I'll summarize all my findings roughly, usually in point form. Sometimes if it's complex enough, I'll actually sketch out a visual funnel. And in the end of that, I'll list out the main testing opportunities. And I've covered a bunch of them in the course of these videos. Big drop-off points, pages where there's some kind of inconsistency between mobile and desktop or different browsers. So anything that doesn't add up becomes something to investigate and could potentially become an experiment.